We will not waste time talking about yesterday's history, talking about the Nile, talking about the Renaissance, talking about the dawn. This file is now closed.
That was the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, giving a speech around the opening of a massive new dam on the Nile.
And despite what he said, it gives me an imagination that he was speaking about history and his country's renaissance. Is that what he did?
Yeah, he said he wouldn't, but he did. And Prime Ministers really miss the opportunity to speak about history because they want themselves to have a place in it, I suppose. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Welcome everyone to World Reframed. We're talking about GERD. Well, I'm not sure if that's actually how you pronounce it. It might be GERD. It's the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And,
for a moment, I thought it was the disease GERD.
No, it's not a disease. It's a dam, Ishmael. And I think the name's quite important here because, like, most dams are actually called after where they are, right? So you have the Three Gorges Dam, which is in Three Gorges in China. You have the Itaipu Dam, which is on the border of Paraguay and Hungary and Brazil. But this one has the name of the country in it, sandwiched in between Grand and Renaissance. So you can tell straight away this is intended to be a really big deal.
Yeah. And it's not just the name, even though, as I'm saying, there's a disease called GERD. You can Google it, GERD, same spelling. But it's backed up by the numbers. It's the biggest hydroelectric project in Africa, expected to be able to produce around 6,000 megawatts of power. And that's around the same level as 6 nuclear reactors. And this is about double what Egypt produced previously. The reservoir behind it can hold around 74 billion cubic meters of water. That's almost as big as Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Put in another way, it's enough water to supply the needs of New York City for 32 years. And all that for the modest sum of $5 billion. And I'm sure Egypt wouldn't be happy about it.
32 years of New York City's water supply. That really is a lot of water. And storing it up in Ethiopia rather than letting it run down the river through Sudan and then on into Egypt has been really pretty controversial.
Yes, I remember covering this about 10 years ago, even when I was with African News. And definitely Egypt's reaction to the dam has ranged from furious to very angry to absolutely apoplectic. The Nile accounts for around 90% of Egypt's water supply, and Egypt is not a minnow. It's home to almost 120 million people, more than any other country in Africa except Nigeria and Ethiopia. When the dam project was first announced, some in Egypt even threatened military action, and there was talk of sabotaging the construction, actually.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? But back then, the idea of sort of commandos with explosives on their back, hiking into another country to blow up infrastructure, that would have seemed like something out of a fiction novel, right? Something out of one of these, Lee Child books. But in light of what happened on the Nord Stream pipeline, which really did get blown up, it doesn't seem quite so far-fetched. And you can only imagine what kind of crisis that would have caused with two of Africa's biggest nations, facing off against each other, potentially in an armed conflict.
Yeah, and the relationship thawed in 2014, and the various parties, especially even including Sudan, is also heavily involved, although not quite as angry as Egypt. Sudan has its own problems that it's dealing with, but they came to an agreement, agreeing to cooperate on water use. Egypt still wasn't exactly happy, even up till now.
Yeah, I guess if your water supply, Ishmael, came from your neighbour's house and you saw him putting a tap on the pipe, you're probably going to be not happy, especially, if that's the only way you get water, even if he just says, I promise I'm not going to turn it off.
Yeah, indeed. And I would have gone to the water company and get it fixed. However, Egypt sought mediation from the US and the World Bank and even the UN Security Council. Ultimately, Ethiopia stood its ground and said, basically, our country, our water. And it continued building the dam and filling the reservoir. Egypt made some more threats, tried to get Sudan on board, and is still talking about the dam as a threat to its national security. And while both sides say they want a solution, there doesn't seem any immediate prospect of that happening because Ethiopia would have to agree to give up at least some control over how it could use the dam.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it goes back to the name, right? Having Ethiopian dam in the name, it's all about sovereignty, and it's seen as part, again, go back to the name, of the renaissance of the country, and the government's so confident in the transformation that it's going to deliver. It's even banned the import of petrol vehicles so it can switch to electric cars, which are powered by green Ethiopian energy. And the other countries around are pretty excited too, because, as you know, electricity is such a precious commodity. I mean, it's invaluable in Africa, and there's just not enough of it. Most of the 660 million people in the world without access to electricity live in Africa. I think like around 90% of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. But there's also hundreds of millions more who have unstable and unreliable supplies. They can't guarantee they're going to have it from one moment to the next. So Kenya and some of the other neighbouring countries to Ethiopia are really eager to get up their imports now that the dam is up and generating power.
Yeah, and I mean, what picked my attention is Ethiopian dam, because the water in there belongs to Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. So Ethiopian dam, that's quite surprising. But Kenya's President William Ruto, he was among the high-profile leaders at the dam's inauguration this week. He praised it as an African initiative, a less expected presence was Prime Minister of Barbados, but the message there was that this is not only an African success, but something developing nations around the world can aspire to. If you are not Egypt, then the dam looks like a win-win, improving the lives of citizens in a climate-friendly and economy-boosting manner.
Yeah, I think it really is quite significant that the Prime Minister of Barbados decided to show for this ceremony this week, because that has been one of the leaders in the fight against colonialism, in seeking to show the independence of these nations and try and get reparations also from some of the European powers. And I think the dam is symbolic itself of an anti-colonial message. Ethiopia, of course, as everybody knows, prides itself on being one of the only African nations that was never colonized. And the Prime Minister Ahmed, he didn't miss the opportunity to press that point when he gave his speech.
Ethiopia's prosperity is sure to be real. Ethiopia will once more show its strength to the black people like that of the Adwa battle. This is our second Adwa victory. Let us therefore stand strong together in unity and prosperity, and I would like to thank our brothers and sisters for reaching us this far, and Ethiopia salutes you with great appreciation. This is the shining time now, and the future has much to do. I call on everyone to continue to work together and move forward.
And that's remarkable, because the Battle of Aura, which he refers to, is perhaps the most famous moment in Ethiopian history, indeed in the whole of modern African history. It saw local forces led by Emperor Menelik II and the Empress Beto defeat an invading Italian army in 1896, preserving their country's independence. It inspired people with African heritage across the world, including leaders of America's civil rights movement. By putting it into his speech, Ahmed is setting the dam up as something far beyond the power plant.
Yeah, much, much bigger. And, I think people will look back and say this is a moment in history, this opening of this dam. But perhaps it's not the end of the story, because these issues aren't resolved, right? And any problems that Egypt has with its water supply, perhaps regardless of whether they're due to the dam, and with climate change, who knows what can happen, that's bound to lead to domestic pressure. And that's going to put pressure on the Egyptian leaders to reopen the issue, and who knows what can happen. So this is certainly a story which hasn't finished, but it's definitely a story which has large implications. Until next week, please keep up to date on globalsouthworld.com, and goodbye for now.